Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, we have an interview, and on the studio line with me is Tom Joseph. Tom, so glad you are here. Welcome.
Billy, thanks for having me on your show.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. This is what Tom has is an interesting concept. I'll just give you the cliff notes here just so you got an idea of what we're going to talk about. I'll let him passionately talk about it because this is something he's really working hard to do. But what he's talking about is a different way of getting candidates in place, something that doesn't always involve big money like we are so used to. It's a contest for Congress where every citizen gets to participate and candidates rise through the rounds of public support, not just dollars and party endorsements. He is the founder of America's Main Street Party and is building a moneyless nominating system. At its core, this approach has no ideology attached to it. Local committees, not power brokers or wealthy donors, run a people's primary targeted in U.S. House districts, always balancing red and blue. The goal would be a free and equal playing field that results in candidates with broader popular support, not just party backing. Tom believes real change comes from making the current election system work for everyone rather than inventing new laws. So, let's start with a little bit about you. Now, I'm in Ohio. You're in Pennsylvania. We're kind of from the same area of the country. Both
Very close.
Both states play a pretty big role in most elections.
Yep.
You know, we're two of the, well, of course, you have California, Texas, Florida, a few others, but our two states are probably the two of the largest economies, probably in the top 5, top 6 in the country. And we got a lot going on when it comes to elections and things like that in our neighborhood. Have you always been from this area, and were you always watching what was going on with politics?
I'm born and bred in Pittsburgh, and I'm a lifer.
Yep.
And I didn't always pay attention to politics. I became aware of politics actually through Ross Perot.
Okay.
And that election of 1992. And being a time actually when I was out of work and starting my company and watched the conventions, I was really torn about who to support.
Yeah.
I mean, between all three candidates. But through that, just recognizing that Congress is really the problem. I mean, you talk about states that are important, but all districts are important. When it comes down, the Congress is supposed to be the most powerful body, the House being the most powerful of all. And that means every district in every state could play a part in establishing that balance.
Yeah. So this is something that centers around Congress. This isn't really so much about the presidential run. Is that correct?
Not at all.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. And I would have to say that I think a lot of people are a little too focused on what a given president is doing. It's probably your local representatives that are going to impact you as you're getting up in the morning far more quicker than what the president is doing at any given time. I'm going to say that historically, the Senate may be, that was where the skilled politicians were supposed to be. The House was something that was more of a, I don't want to say a sacrifice, but it was like a civic duty. That was kind of the idea. And the idea was that people gave up what they were doing and did what was best for the country. And somewhere along the line, these became careers. These became big money careers. The founding fathers warned us, don't mess with parties. Don't do it. We did it anyway. So how did that happen? Historically, how did we get to where we are right now?
Well, I think it's just something we evolved into, that the parties liked, they became in power and they figured out ways to preserve that power. It's the only things that they agree on is an election system that basically is biased towards incumbency.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your system here. a moneyless nominating system. The problem with these things in the past, or what always comes to mind, is how do you fight that? You have marketing firms that are handling candidates, their products as much as they are anything else. Negative ads, people always complain about them, but the fact of the matter is that they do work. Statistically, that is true. How do you break through that wall? What's your plan?
Well, you can't enter our contest if there's any physical evidence of you having a campaign. And this is where the election law actually works on our behalf. If anybody spends money to campaign, they have to form a committee. If they form a committee and spend money, they're out of our contest. You can only be in our contest if you don't spend money or have physical evidence of campaign. So it's an easy rule to enforce.
Okay.
So, here, when monopolies come down, the rules that they set up to preserve themselves all of a sudden work against them. So what's interesting about this whole concept is that we're finding that all the things that helped create the protections for the parties are starting to work against them when you put a moneyless system in place. So we're using technology to allow potential nominees to put a portal up where they have a campaign. It could be their slogans, their buttons, their platforms, their public service announcements that state their positions. And, and because they're all given an equal number of characters, pixels, and seconds of time on their video, it's a free and equal platform. So no candidate is allowed to have more say than the other. And the constituents can now filter through those candidates and figure out the ones that align with them and go through a multi-round competition where you can advance a lot of candidates and whittle the field down to a top. That's what we do in everything else that we do, whether it's the Olympics or a job competition. The elections are the only crazy, stupid place that we do the way we do it now. Everything else is a fair process.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm missing is what's the word I'm looking for here? What would obligate a given candidate to play within this system?
Well, the local committee is going to officiate it. So if somebody doesn't play within the system, they're going to toss them off the platform. They're not going to be in the round. They're out. The thing is that the parties don't enforce any rules. They let rich people run amok. So, they can come in and say that, hey, I did this and I was in this branch of the service, and they get 90% in their way into their campaign, and they weren't in that service. They didn't have that job, or they didn't do that thing. They lie their way through. I mean, we're going to have a committee that's going to say, you know what? This is a lie. You can put it out there. We're going to call it out for lie. You want to lie? Go ahead. But these things will matter when money doesn't buy your seat.
Interesting. Okay. The other thing,
it's so hard for us to wrap our heads around a fair system, right, Billy?
Yes, it is. It is. I just don't know how. Yeah.
How will this fly? A fair system? Can we actually do something better than the horrible primary system we have? Come on.
Yes, it is a bad system. There's no argument there. The other thing, I've been around of a certain age, as I always say, and I don't remember, let's say, when Reagan ran, even when Clinton ran, on down the line, I didn't hear too many people questioning elections. Now it's all the time. If your guy doesn't win or your woman doesn't win, well, it was rigged. And there's always going to be a certain amount of people out there that believe it.
There's all the House elections are so uncompetitive. Nobody's complaining about them. So if you look at it as a percentage of all the federal elections for the House, Senate, and President, and look at the number of percentage that people are complaining about them being unfair, it's a really small percentage because all the House elections are so uncompetitive. They're gerrymandered or they're naturally uncompetitive. It's only like 5 to 10% of them that are swing elections. And even those, there's not even fraud complaints. Yeah. Senate, is there fraud complaints there?
No, I don't think. I think when it comes to Congress, I don't know that there's the same kind of accusations that you have in presidential elections, but.
Okay, it's an aberration, that complaint. Let's throw it out. We're talking about Congress night. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
So if we're talking about congressional elections, there really isn't a lot of issue about them complaining about them being rigged or whatever. It's really hard. It's a small population. Nobody's saying that there should be more Republicans coming from California.
No, what I was getting at is there is a feeling now that the congressional seats of one kind or another, because of the gerrymandering.
Oh, that part that has nothing to do with voting.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not going to you're not going to, because that's a big part of this.
Well, here's the thing. Our system is designed to combat gerrymandering. Our system works best in gerrymandered districts. So we're using statistics to determine where to go. We're not looking for candidates. We're looking for districts that are ripe for disruption because there's certain numbers that work there. So think of a district where the winner of either a red or blue district has at least 66% of the vote, but not much more than 80%. And you're wondering, why is that? It's like, well, you know what? If you have two blue candidates and they split the vote, that red candidate still doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
Same thing when you flip it around. So when you're in that 2/3 to 80%, but once you get up above above 80%, there's not enough opposition votes to swing the district back to the center. So we're looking for those districts. Well, guess what? That's what a gerrymandered district is. It's not wildly uncompetitive. It's where the parties have arranged to bury opposition votes. And guess what? Our system works fantastic in there because it lures those opposition votes to vote in a red district for the blue people to vote for a pink candidate, push that candidate because they'd love to screw the other party. And the same thing happens in the blue district, that the red people who've been buried there are going to push for a baby blue candidate, not the Navy Democrat. So now the opposition politics actually work in our favor. So that's the way our system works, is that we go into those districts. The other thing we do that's really clever, I don't know if I mentioned, I'm working with these college students in Philadelphia to kind of build the prototypes, work out the rules, kids from Penn, Drexel, Haverford, some really bright kids that design the system. And one of the aspects of it is that there's going to be the local committee identifies 7 issues that are going to come before Congress in the next cycle. And the candidates to get into the contest have to weigh in on where they are, left, center, right, yes, no on these issues. So you can imagine a free contest, you're going to have a lot of candidates. How do you whittle through the field? Well, Billy, you'd go in and say, hey, those 7 issues, these 3 or 4 are critically important to me. Which candidates match up to me? There might be a field of 100, maybe 25, 30 that match. You're going to study them all. Hey, no, you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to click a button. I'm going to approve them all. That's approval voting. You would advance those. And so you get to now the top 20. You figure out how many of my 25 candidates advance. Maybe like 8 or 10. You could study them. Hey, you'd be thrilled if they got to the top 4, So you can use approval voting. But once we get to a top 4, we're going to do something. It's called a virtual town hall, where the local committee would introduce new questions, opportunities for the candidates to present video responses, like another public service announcement, weigh in so the constituents have more reason to kind of weigh the vote. And maybe at this stage, we're looking at either a ranked choice vote to get to a top 2. But at the end, we want to have a final debate between the top 2, have everybody pick their candidate. The winner has at least 50% of the vote, and now is the consensus nominee. Now look at this. You got a nominee that was chosen by the people, not by rich people that probably didn't live in the district, or some politician in another state said, hey, pick this person because they represent the party. This person whose only incentive is to represent the constituent who just nominated them. Who are you going to vote for in the general election? That person or that incumbent who frankly just isn't doing anything for the constituents of that district anymore?
Interesting.
That's our argument.
Okay. Now, when you talk about the technology and the app, explain a little bit about that. How is that working?
Well, it's, it works like a lot of the things we use today, whether it's a dating app. Think about this, you'd be better off. You have a lot more criteria if you're on a dating app than you do right now, whether you're picking a Republican or Democrat. You don't even know what you're going to get in bed with if you pick somebody in the party,
Yeah.
So in here, you would actually be able to the constituents get to see these people, they see their profiles, they get to understand who they are. Obviously, once they get into the general election cycle, now they're into the fray. It's going to be more exposure in terms of what they are, but at least they've been elevated. Just like if they were in the Olympics, that some person you didn't know anything about, all of a sudden is a superstar. They have a Q rating, their background, you have trust in them. We can use the system to build trust in somebody that didn't buy their way in or inherited it or have had a family name that caused
Yeah.
you to vote for them.
Yeah. So basically, I'm starting to understand this a little better. This is a system where in the primary early stages, everybody at least can get their foot in the door.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And once you start to, develop, and then you start heading towards the primary process. Now that I'm going to say the system becomes a little bit more conventional once the nomination has been won. Am I correct in saying that?
And you're wondering, how do we keep them from being corrupted now?
Well, my next question would be if somebody comes up from nothing and now they're up against, let's say, a particular candidate who won the competition fair and square. He didn't spend any money, but he was just a very dynamic guy. People liked him, but he's got money. Now he's up against somebody who went through the system and doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
How does that balance out?
Well, you know what? This does not work without, the solution is not just about the party. It's about how we use the entire political committee system in a different way. So the next thing we have to do is attract a super PAC that will back the winner. And this is a very unique super PAC. Initially, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of using super PACs. It's like, oh, they're evil and we got to overturn Citizens United. But, I was frustrated. I originally thought that the way we'd fund the winners, that we use they have the Senate Democratic reelection fund or the House Republican. I thought they were actually funds. So I'm working with this election attorney to develop this idea the contest winner will get the party reelection funds. And so he'd been running for election, he lost, and we finally pays attention to what I'm doing. He said, Tom, you can't do that, it's illegal. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, it's not a fund. I said, the House reelection fund's not a fund? He goes, no, it's a list of people that write checks.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, but it just doesn't sound so good on CNN to say this is a list of people to buy Congress every 2 years. But that's really what it was. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm inventing the same system that we currently have, which is corrupt. It's all about rich people. So I went home, and frankly, Billy had, I think, 2 or 3 bourbons, and I wrapped my head around using a super PAC, but using one that was for the common good, that would back the candidate that won. And think about it. This is a very different implementation of super PAC. This is one that, super PACs either back candidates or issues. This is a super PAC back the winner of the contest. And the idea is that there might be a Ross Perot out there or a Mark Cuban or somebody, or, that doesn't want to put their foot on either side, that would basically restore the voice of people going down in history as saying that, hey, I'm going to create a finance. So that's the big part about what we're doing, is not just about the party. It's that we're going to use all aspects of this committee system in a different way. The super PAC is really like our marketing department for the winners. And they're also the marketing department for the contest coming in the district. The local committees are just another implementation, how you use a political committee, and we're making sure to follow the election, Federal Election Commission rules for how you use funds. And then the candidate committee, what we're doing, we're tying rules around that. So the contest winner, when they form their candidate committee, in exchange for the super PAC funding, they have to agree to let a treasurer from the nominating committee run their candidate committee and either empty that account or return any remaining funds to the nominating committee. No war chests, and also the candidates cannot contribute any money to their campaign more than any other regular citizen. So right now, candidates can contribute their entire wealth to their campaign. We're not going to let people buy their seat in office. I mean, why aren't people putting rules in place to make things fair? The parties could do that. They're willing to sell out to rich people so that they'll win seats. If we create this system, we're confident we'll create a better candidate, and we don't need people who are going to buy their seat.
Yeah. The one thing I'll ask you that I don't know that you've been asked this before. This might be kind of a curveball, but here's what I have a concern about in the voting populace in general. In that, in elections past, whether they're congressional, whether they're local, whether they're presidential, whatever, I think that over the years, the United States has been pretty lucky throughout its history in that we've always had what I might call a conventional wisdom in the public. You can fool some of the people some of the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. That type of thing. I'm not so sure that conventional wisdom is still there. I think one of the reasons. I think one of the reasons why a lot of politicians are playing these roles, I'm on your team, is because as much as people complain about the party system, as much as they complain about gridlock, as much as they complain about all that stuff, there's a part of them that wants to put their guy in. They want somebody who's going to tell them what they want to hear. I don't know that the population is as discriminating as it was 50 years ago. I kind of think you have to pander to that a little bit. Let's just say, for example, your system aside, you have a guy that really wants to put a lot of nuance into issues. I'm not either for or against it. I have to explain it. A candidate that's going to do that, are they going to get hurt? Are people going to have the patience to listen to somebody who's going to provide a lot of nuance to the issues? Or have we passed that? Is it possible to win an election now with somebody who's really going to explain and detail a lot of issues?
I think ultimately this comes down to whether Americans want a system of accountability and really to figure out whether this can deliver it. And that's what we want to do. We're always saying you have to put your positions down on paper. So, the hell with nuance. I mean, if you're just sitting there bullshitting about what you're going to do, but when it comes 6 months later and you're in Congress and it's time to vote, we don't know what that's about. That's meaningless. So we want to make sure that we're at least moving beyond people voting for blue or red, and identifying real things that they care about and putting their position down on paper. And if they don't stand behind it, it's time to elect somebody else. That's the way it's supposed to be. The true voice of the people. If money distorts representation, a system that removes money from it should return the representative to the true center of that bell curve of that district. We believe that there's a bell curve, the normal distribution in every district, and it differs. It can't be defined by one color of blue or red.
Yeah. Well, I hope that there's here again. My concern would be is there a public that really wants that as much as they say they do. When it comes right down to it, there's a lot of people that will say I support the red. I support the blue.
Oh, you know what? I believe that the current people that support the Republican and Democratic Party do not want this. And they will not support this. The question is that are there enough people on the fringes here that are ready to take charge? And you're asking a very legitimate question, but right now the number of people that affiliate with parties are dwindling and dwindling. If there's ever a time for an idea for like this to happen, it's now. And you know what? Maybe it happens now and fails, but we're laying the groundwork for what really needs to happen. And until you remove money from the system, you'll never get fair representation.
Yeah. The other thing is, I would say, getting back to the process of getting people access, getting people who are worthy a chance to get their foot in the door. The one thing about, you could say this about anything. You could say this about the internet. The really good thing about the internet is everybody has access. The bad thing about it is that everybody has access.
Everybody has access.
How do you sort out what could be possibly hundreds, if not thousands, of people that want to participate in these things?
We're actually partnering with an organization called the Digital Democracy Project, who's already using secure mobile voting technology that's actually originally developed to use for the military for service members that are on submarines or war zones or where they can't physical ballots, but they use blockchain technology.
Hmm.
There's a linkage set between a photo ID and that phone. Before the vote is submitted, it's encrypted. There's a verification between the face and and this is adopted as a lot of states that are currently using it on a very small volume, but it's secure, proven, and working. And the Digital Democracy Project actually has this now working in 7 states where voters can register and basically weigh in with their state legislators on what they support. So it's a way for people it's important beyond just polls for people in the legislature to know these actual verified voters want me to vote this way. So we're going to build our platform on top of that because the security is already there. They've already figured that part out. That was a huge break for us. I thought we were going to have to spend millions to figure out how we deal with the security, the
Hmm.
identity. I mean, think about this. We're banking. We do so much now these days where things are two-factor authenticated. Almost
Sure.
everybody has 2FA on their phone. So we are there as far as being able to have a secure this is an election system, a nominating system. If you really think that our system produced a bad candidate, it was corrupt, vote for the other guy or girl,
Hmm.
But I'm confident the proof will be in the pudding, that we're going to put out better candidates. You can throw stones at the process, but if we continue to say, hey, these people are more representative than your typical Republican or Democrat, I think we're going to get votes. I think we're going to win.
Yeah. I think my question was if you have a lot of people who want to participate as candidates, and maybe a lot of them are very sincere, okay, you're going to have a lot of people, you're going to have a very large field to manage. Okay, and that's kind of where my question is: how do you, in the early stages of the primary process, when you're getting people, looking at these issues, deciding how they're going to explain them, what they want to do with these issues, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to say the same thing. How do you here again? How do you whittle down to a group of candidates in all these different areas that's manageable? How do you end up not having 50 in one district?
Oh no, I think the initial field would be 50 to 100 candidates. Now,
Okay,
to get in through the contest, there will be a requirement that you get endorsement from other constituents in the district just to
I
get
see.
there. So you can't just enter
I see.
because I'm there. You have to show, and we're trying to model this actually the way the general election system works. You can get on the ballot in any state for the House of Representatives by getting endorsements a certain threshold. So we're going to say it might be 100, it might be 500, but to enter the contest, you'll need to get 100 or 250 or 500 other constituents in the district to download the app, verify the identity, and for them to endorse you and say that, hey, I support you. Once you hit that threshold, then your nomination platform gets processed through the nominating committee, reviews it. They verify that if you said that you were in the Army, you were in that division of the Army, or if you had this job or went to school, that your information is accurate. They're not there to screen people out. They're just there to do what an HR department would typically do at this stage.
I see.
But in that way, if you have, say you have 100 candidates, they each had to get 100 to 250 endorsements coming in, you're going to have 10 to 25,000 people in the district already participating in the contest before it starts.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
now there's a rush to make the top 20. So now you have 50 to 100 candidates that are out there campaigning, trying to get people to download the app, get in there, endorse them. And hey, if your cousin doesn't make the first cut, you're likely to still be interested in this contest and participate. So, our goal is to start out where there's 10,000 people involved before the contest starts.
Hmm.
You get 20 to 30,000. You get 100,000 people participating. That's what participates in a public primary. If we can equal or outdraw the public primary, we're going to come into the general election as a favorite.
Interesting. So, what would be the incentive then for a candidate to choose this method?
Well, you know what? If you're rich
Over,
enough to buy a seat in office, you probably won't like this system.
Mhm.
We want the people that aren't rich enough to buy a seat in office. We want people that really are there to serve the people. Because think
Okay,
about the benefit of this system is that once you get elected, you don't have to spend the next 2 years prostituting yourself for donors. You just go do your job for the district and you go back and you win the contest. And that's where we want to change the system. The current people that are in the House or Senate, they spend not all their time, but a huge amount of their time pandering to donors. And a lot of these donors don't even live in the district where they serve. I mean, that's ridiculous. So you're soliciting money from people that don't live in your district. So under this system, they work 100% of the time for the district, then they go re-enter the contest. As an incumbent, they still have a huge advantage. But if they aren't, doing what they promised to do, some other constituent's going to point it out and likely challenge them,
Mm-hmm. With the what kind of reminds me of the system that you're talking about with the app. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. With your system, the nominating process, those early stages, the votes are sent through the app. Is that correct? For the nominating process. Okay. It kind of reminds me.
It's all mobile. It's like American Idol.
Okay.
It's all mobile. It's like American Idol.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to do people, American Idol, you can vote more than once. I mean, this will all be like, again, if you look at the Digital Democracy Project, what they have, it's all secure. They ensure that it's one person, one vote. Okay. But an endorsement vote can actually be you endorse all the people that you want to endorse at that stage.
Okay. One of what reminds me, very close to where I'm at, there's a company called Diebold. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're the ones that did the voting machines a couple of years back, some time back. And one of the questions was, how do you audit it? How do you what is the trail? If somebody does say, we need to recount these again, is there a way to audit this system? If it's
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you have the original things. I mean, my background is actually in accounting. I started in accounting. It's a really bookkeeping firm, but tracking the money for hundreds of businesses and nonprofits, funds, but there's the idea of checksums that you have to, reconcile activity between one location and another. And imagine if we were this scared of doing this with money. I mean, people want to steal money way more than they want to steal votes. I mean, so all these things can be worked out through audits. The other thing we want to do is we want to do this thing called virtual polling locations.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the original concept of polling location was that it was small enough that you knew, Billy, that you were in the district. I know you. You come to the bar, we drink together. Of course, you're here. You're a citizen. The districts are so big, the polling, that nobody can do that. So what we can do with technology, we can shrink the polling locations down to be your apartment building or your elementary school district or, whatever it is that is at a reasonable amount. And then people or constituents can actually go in there and say, hey, I see a green dot with Billy. I know he lived there. Billy, I see you voted. You say, oh, I did not. Some of you must have. But through that, by making things transparent and open and shrinking it down, we can actually restore the way the system was originally supposed to operate. I mean, and this is what actually companies do, make information transparent, auditable. It's just that because government is running it, it's just they hide the information. They just don't do a very good job of making it so that you would actually have faith in it.
Exactly. So this app that you talk about, you got some developers putting it together and it's coming together very nicely. What's the time frame on this?
I would say that we are in a beta release. In fact, I would say over the next week or so, we have something that is demonstrable. So, and our goal for this beta release is really to create a system where constituents compare it to what we're doing now in the primary. Like, I don't think we're really ready to run this for the midterms. I mean, if a miracle happened and we got financial backing and the public all of a sudden understood that would be great. But I really think what we're doing with the beta release is that we're going to allow people to run through the system, through the paces using a mock nominating process and avatar candidates. So they'll be able to see how the 5 rounds go. And they'll be able to get in there. They'll answer the quiz. They'll match up on issues. They'll determine the different ways they can find people to support. They'll see how they are eliminated. And we'll run this for red and blue districts. And it's PA1 and PA2, which happen to be both uncompetitive Pennsylvania districts. A lot of this is centered around Philadelphia. It's a birthplace of democracy. And The
Yep.
ideas around this are around founding father James Wilson, who famously penned the words "and equal" to the free election clause. But his thought is that if elections up in that point were free, but if they weren't fair, that the fountain of democracy would be poisoned. He thought that free and equal elections were he described as the wellspring of democracy, and that we need to keep them fair.
Yes. We're talking to Tom Joseph, the founder of Americans Main Street Party. I think you're coming in at the right time. You mentioned Ross Perot. Now, this was back in 1992. This was Bill Clinton and Bush the senior. And I honestly think that Ross Perot might have changed history had he stayed in the race. He got weird with backing out and then coming back in. And I think we were ready then almost, and then the doors really slammed shut for the next 30 years. I think there is a certain amount of people out there that are fed up with the process. There's a lot of people out there who say they hate politics because everything is so partisan. And I think there is a crack in the door. I think you're coming in at the right time to get the word out, to make people understand this process better. How can people find out more about this organization and investigate it more so that they can understand it themselves?
The fine print is tough to read here, but it's mainstreetparty.org. I would suggest go to a webpage called A Brand New Way. There's a 1-minute video that explains in general how the contest works. And on that page, there's more of a narrative of how the endorsement round, the virtual town hall, and the final debate, and how that whole thing works. At this stage, like I said, the interns did a proof of concept. So there's some videos on the proof of concept. We had a prototype, but very soon we're going to have something on the website that looks like the app, and then eventually an app that you can download and run through the contest. But we'd like, people, obviously, if they could donate, we could use the money. I don't think that money is the biggest factor. I think traction at this point. There's also a link on our webpage to go to our change.org petition. So if we can get, whenever your show drops, we'll get to see, how many people went to the website and did they sign the petition. But knowing that people like the idea, support it, I think that's the biggest thing. At this point, we really haven't marketed the idea. We were just building the prototype. It was really January we started to try to get on podcasts and market it and try to get some attention to the idea.
Yeah. Have you talked to any established politicians about this?
I have. I mean, generally, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're going to absolutely hate this idea. This is not, their system works for them, and they have their committees and they have their funders, and they feel very protected. I don't want to name names, but I did talk to a representative here in Pittsburgh, and I said, hey, is there somebody within your party you would suggest? He goes, no, but somebody in the other party I'd suggest is too. Think about that. It's kind of funny.
That's funny. I think independents might be a little bit more inclined to look at this first.
Absolutely.
And here again, I think there's still that party loyalty that some people have now that is beyond reason, quite frankly. It is beyond reason. And I'm a little worried about that whether it's your system or the one we have or any variation thereof. My concern would be is that, people always had their opinions before.
But
and
I always say, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Now they have their own reality. Everybody's entitled to their own reality now. It's not just the opinion. And that's what concerns me. So something like this might be coming just in the nick of time.
And part of that is creating vision for what it can be. And up into this point, I think people have been pretty hopeless that there could be any change, because there are just obstacles thrown up. And, that's why I think this is so interesting, is that finding this loophole, that if potential nominees don't spend money, political party can kind of do whatever it wants to create the contest to choose a nominee. That has the potential to really change the game.
You mentioned some interns. You mentioned some developers. How about social media? Do you have a plan to market this or make it known through social media? I think I think TikTok and things like that might actually work for this.
Yeah, we tried Facebook. We're trying all that. I think ultimately having a app that people can download and play with is going to be the difference maker. And for some reason, people have not really been great about liking us on Facebook and Instagram. We're focusing more at this point on LinkedIn, X.
Yeah, X is good for politics.
So I don't know if people just are tired of getting in the battle, but I'm surprised how little likes we've had. Even though, like in general, like when I go on podcasts, we get a bunch of people clicking on the change.org. So that means, for whatever reason, change.org has been the biggest way we've seen support, because people can weigh in, and I guess their friends really don't see it.
Yeah. Well, it takes time. It takes time. And, the other thing about big money is big money was probably in some ways, I'm not saying it's not effective now because we know it is, but traditional advertising, 40 years ago, let's say, if you could afford a big television ad campaign, you were probably going to be very influential. And now, especially with boomers, let's say, for example, boomers get all of their information, and all now, and here again, I don't want to get in. I know people always say, well, not everybody. All right. Realistically speaking, over the age of 65, your information is coming from cable news. Okay. And below that, the younger you go, you get down around 25 years old, 20 years old, there's a good chance that those individuals have never watched the 6 o'clock news a day in their life. Okay. So the idea of throwing big money at television and big media, it is not as effective as it was. So I think that's an opening for you as well. Because there was
it's people, they're on their devices. We're going right to their devices. We want to create, a party that's basically an app that's a gateway onto the general election ballot. Yeah. And, everybody's so focused around the presidency. The Constitution starts with the House of Representatives. I think it was, originally designed that if we were ever going to reconstitute our government, this is where we start. But for whatever reason, it's easiest for us to just think about the presidency. But
sure,
this is the cheapest, easiest, and legal way to disrupt the system.
Well, I think it needs a disruption, and that alone might be effective. So we're talking again to Tom Joseph, the founder of America's Main Street Party. Do check it out. Learn more about it. If you enjoy the process, if you enjoy politics and you enjoy the process at all, new ideas are always worth exploring, and sometimes they can be, very intriguing. And we hope a lot of people check it out for you, Tom. Thank you so much for telling us about it today.
Thank you so much for having me on mainstreetparty.org. Thanks, Billy.
Awesome. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. My name is Billy Dees. You can find me, as far as social media goes, on X at Billy Dees. That's kind of like my social media home, but I'm on most social media. You can definitely find me on all the major podcast platforms. As a matter of fact, we have about a 10-year history, and we're real easy to find, the Billy Dees Podcast. Thank you so much for checking out our program today, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees Podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X at Billy Dees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees Podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees Podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.